Some say one-pot meals are a lazy way of cooking. I say work smarter, not harder. So I'm going to show you 4 one-pot meals that are going to make your weeknight dinners amazing. These are easy and so good. I am working with 1 pound of small pasta shells. You could also do this with elbow macaroni. It doesn't have to be shells. I'm also using 1.5 pounds of lean ground beef, 1 can of Rotel. I'm going to drain that. I'm also using some mild cheddar cheese and some taco seasoning mix. I'll also add some heavy cream into the mix, water, and other seasonings. So first my son is going to help me shred the cheese, and I am going to start by cooking the ground beef. So you can season this with light chili powder, paprika, ground cumin, salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder, but I'm just going to add taco seasoning mix. I'm making my life easy today. This is just going to be an easy one-pot meal. And I'm also going to add an additional, like 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder. I'll say that's optional. At some point you could just add salt to taste towards the end. So now I'm just going to combine that with the cooked ground beef. Now I'm adding my pasta shells, the entire bag, and I'm just going to combine this. I'm not really going to toast the pasta shells. I just want this to combine with the cooked ground beef. Now I'm adding my drained can of Rotel. This is just diced tomatoes and green chilies. They even have spicier versions of this. I went with mild. And I'm going to combine this. Now I'm going to add 4.5 cups of water. Here I needed to add the extra half cup. I'm just going to give this a mix. And essentially, this is all going to cook in this one pot. I'm not going to boil water and cook the pasta shells separately. I'm really being kind of like lazy, but you know, this is good. This is a great, convenient one-pot meal. Okay, cover with a lid, and you'll want to bring that up to a rapid simmer or like a boil, and then turn the heat down once it starts to boil and cook. So the cheese is shredded, and this is the heavy cream that I'll be using. Like 1.5 cups goes into this with 8 ounces of cheese. And now I'm going to carefully remove the lid. And this has simmered and boiled for about 10 minutes. So I'm just going to put it way low. I still want it to kind of have a gentle simmer. And I still want some of that liquid to remain in the pot. I don't want to boil it until it's dry because it's going to continue cooking and you need a little bit of that pasta water. Okay, so here I'm just going to carefully add my shredded mild cheddar cheese. You could really use any type of cheese that you like. Pepper jack is also great in this. If you really want that Velveeta macaroni shells to this dish, add like maybe 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese into the mix. That really makes it extra creamy. Okay, so now I'm going to add my 1 cup to 1.5 cups of heavy cream. And then I'm just going to combine, remember this is still simmering, and just let that melt and combine into the cooked beef and shells. So this is what I'm working with. We're ready to eat, and it's so good. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a creamy, saucy skillet lasagna. This is going to be good. Today I'm working with 12 ounces of mini lasagna pasta, or you can take regular sheets of pasta and just break it into pieces. I'm also working with 1 pound of lean ground beef. I'm also working with a jar of pasta sauce. A 24-ounce jar works for this recipe. Mine is 25. Here I'm working with half of an onion, 2 cloves of garlic, shredded low moisture mozzarella cheese, about 8 ounces, 2.5 to 3 cups of low sodium beef broth, and I'm also going to be using Italian seasoning. Here I have salt and pepper. Okay, so let's get started. So in a preheated 12-inch skillet, I'm adding around 2 to 3 tablespoons of cooking oil. Now I'm going to saute my diced onion. I'm also going to add just a pinch of salt to help the saute. And I'm going to cook these until they are aromatic and translucent. Now I'm adding my ground beef. And I'm just going to break this apart. And I know some people have those kitchen utensils where it breaks apart ground beef easier. I really need to get one of those, but for the most part, I typically just use my wooden spoon. Here I'm adding a teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon of cracked black pepper. A lot of the salt and seasoning is to your preference, by the way. 2 teaspoons of Italian herb seasoning. This is just a dry Italian herb blend. And I'm just going to continue the saute and breaking the ground beef apart. By the way, I am working with a medium to medium high heat. My beef is cooked, and now for the garlic. I actually used around 3 cloves of minced garlic because I just like garlic, but 2 cloves works for this. And I'm just going to quickly saute this with the cooked ground beef. Now I'm going to add around 2.5 cups of my low sodium beef broth. And I'm going to reserve the other half cup for the jar of sauce. So here I'm adding all of my pasta sauce. Like I said, use the brand or type that you prefer. And with that half cup, I'm going to swish it around to get any of that residual sauce that was left behind. So in all, I'm using 3 cups of low sodium beef broth. Now you'll want to give this a good mix, and if there's any fond in the pan, this is a good time to scrape that up. Here I'm going to add all of my mini lasagna pasta, and I'm just going to make sure all of my pasta is coated, saturated, and in this brothy sauce. This is what's going to cook it. Now I'm going to cover with a lid, and I am going to lower the heat and let this simmer covered for about 5 to 7 minutes. So I have some other ingredients to go over. Here I already shredded the 8-ounce block of low moisture mozzarella, or you could use fresh. I'm also going to add some Parmesan cheese, about 3 tablespoons, and I like to add table cream to make it creamy. You could add a half cup of heavy cream, and to garnish, fresh parsley. So let's check on the pasta. So I'm going to remove the lid and just let some of that condensation go back into the pot or the pan here. And I love this meal because it is a 1-pan meal. And I'm just going to gently coat and combine and just mix everything. And at this point, it has been simmering for about 7 minutes, so it's almost there. The pasta I'm working with today, the package that I used, it called for a 13-minute cook time. I'm going to take it to around 12. But really, the doneness of your pasta is to your preference. And I do suggest not using no-bake pasta. I don't know if that would work in this recipe. So I'm going to add several tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese. And I'm just going to add my table cream, or like I said, use a half cup of heavy cream. And the addition of either heavy cream or table cream gives it the creamy skillet lasagna. It's so good in this, so I do suggest you use it. Okay, so now I'm just going to add some more Parmesan cheese. Like I said, probably a 1/4 cup is what I used in this. And I am just going to give this a good stir and combine well. By the way, I am still working with like a medium to medium low heat. You just want it to gently simmer. It's not really boiling out of control. Low moisture mozzarella cheese. Now for a sprinkling of fresh chopped parsley. And what I'm going to do now, it's still over a medium low to low heat. I'm going to cover with a lid, and for another 3 to 5 minutes, let the cheese melt. After about the 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to turn off the heat, and this should be done. And the texture of the pasta should be tender. Now, not mushy. Now, if you want it to be al dente, then scale back a couple of minutes of cook time. But this is ready, and it's so delicious. A great side for this is side salad and crusty garlic bread, and you have a delicious hearty meal. Today I'm making a one pan, one skillet dinner. I'm going to show you how to make an easy, beefy, cheesy rice enchilada casserole. To start, I preheated my skillet. I'm going to add a little cooking oil, and I'm going to toast or start to toast 1 cup of long grain rice. And you want to do this over a low heat setting. It's going to take some time, and I'm just going to start to heat this through. I'm going to let it get very aromatic and a light golden color. For this recipe, I will be using 1 pound of lean ground beef. This is like a 90-10 meat to fat ratio. I'm also going to be using around 6 ounces of shredded mild cheddar cheese. Use the cheese of your choice. And I'm going to be seasoning this with a variety of seasonings and spices. Here I have bouillon powder. I have some smoked paprika going in. This is a garlic, salt, and pepper blend. Some ground cumin. I'll also add onion powder. Here I have 2 cups of water, and I'm also going to be using an easy canned enchilada sauce. I'm going to try this brand today. The last time I did this, I kind of used minute rice and a very spicy enchilada sauce. Okay, so this is fragrant, toasty, aromatic, so I'm going to push everything to one side because, like I said earlier, it is a one pan dish, and I'm just going to keep it all in the pan. So now I'm going to cook and brown the ground beef. And you might be wondering, how is this all going to play out with raw rice and raw beef on one side? Just trust the process, it's all going to work out fine. And this type of meal is especially convenient for people who don't have access to a kitchen, are cooking just with one electric skillet, so trust me, you can just put it all in the pan. But I am going to keep the rice sort of together, season the ground beef, cook it, break it apart, and eventually I am going to mix it all, but I want to give the ground beef a head start before I start mixing it. So I'm seasoning it with all those seasonings, and check the description below. I'll give you a good starting place of the measurements of all the seasonings and what I used in this recipe. So it wasn't too long ago that I did this recipe, but I used minute rice like I stated earlier, and a lot of you wanted to see how to cook this with just regular uncooked rice, so here we are. Okay, so I'm speeding things up a bit, and like I said, just keep the ground beef on one side of the pan, break it apart, cook it. You'll want to cook it through and get some browning on it. And you can sort of check on the rice and kind of move it around on the other side. Okay, so now I'm going to shake in some granulated onion powder. By the way, you could definitely use fresh garlic and onion in this recipe. I'm just using powders because, like I said, I'm going for convenience and just something quick and easy. Okay, so this is almost cooked through. It does have browning, so I'm going to start mixing in the rice. By the way, I failed to mention earlier, I have this kind of like on a medium to medium-high heat at this point. Now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of this chicken tomato flavored bouillon powder. Essentially, I'm adding a lot of the flavors that I would add into a Mexican-style red rice and enchiladas. It's all in one pan. I'm going for more ground cumin because I like it. Give this a good mix. And as you can see, there's good browning on the ground beef. It's cooked through. The rice is toasty, so we're almost there. Now I'm going to add the 2 cups of water. And if you don't like to use chicken bouillon powder, you can add 2 cups of chicken broth and add a little bit of tomato sauce into the mix, or maybe a tablespoon of tomato paste. There's a lot of ways to sort of substitute and switch things around. Okay, so this is mixed. So what I'm going to do is cook this with the lid on, just like you would rice, but you'll want to cook the rice first before adding the other ingredients. Okay, lid on, and I'm going to time this entire cooking process for about 15 minutes, but 3 minutes before I am going to lift the lid and I'm going to add the enchilada sauce. Okay, so this has been cooking for about 12 to 13 minutes, and I know typically I tell you when you're cooking the rice, do not lift the lid, but this is a little different. Okay, so I'm going to give this a mix, just kind of mix things around, and at this point the rice is essentially almost cooked. Okay, so you'll want to mix that around and kind of pat it again together into the pan. And now pour over as evenly as possible the enchilada sauce. This is a 10-ounce can. By the way, you can also use homemade enchilada sauce if you know how to make your own. I have several recipes on that. Okay, cheese goes on top. And I have this on a low heat setting, by the way. I lowered this because you don't want things to burn. I'm also adding some chopped scallions right on top of the cheese. Essentially, when you serve this, you can garnish how you like, but right now I'm going with the scallions. Okay, so I'm going to cover with a lid and let this continue gently simmering for about 3 extra minutes. And then shut off the heat when it's done. So everything is melty and bubbly and cheesy and cooked through. So you can serve right now. And definitely garnish how you like. Maybe some Mexican sour cream and pickled jalapenos. It'll be good. I'm going to show you one of my favorite chicken and rice dishes, but for 2. Here we go. I'm starting with 2 pounds or close to 2 pounds of chicken wings. Here I have some bone broth. Use regular broth. I'm going to be using a can of tomato sauce. I'm also going to be using some ground cumin. I'm going to crush these seeds, but you could use ground cumin seeds in a jar. Here I have black pepper, some paprika is going to go in. I'm going to be using a salt, pepper, garlic blend and some Montreal chicken seasoning, some fresh garlic, and half of this medium onion. I will also be using some cooking oil and half a cup of long grain rice. So while I prep the ingredients, I just wanted to mention I've sort of been doing this series of cooking for 2 because I have a lot of people who watch my channel or follow me and want smaller portions for recipes for 1 or 2 people. So that's what I've been doing lately. Okay, so I have prepped my chicken wings and I cut off the tips or the wing tips. You can leave those on, but now I'm just going to season. I'll use half a teaspoon of this blend. You could essentially season your chicken wings or your chicken with whatever you like, salt, pepper, garlic, onion powder. I like these blends. Okay, and I'm gonna add that paprika. And in the description below, I'll give you a good starting place of like measurements. Okay, into a preheated pan with cooking oil, I am going to brown and start the cooking process for these chicken wings. These are bone-in. If you're using boneless, the cook time will be less time. If you're using chicken breast, again, it's not going to take that long to cook it, but I prefer wings and legs for my chicken and rice. And this is what I grew up eating as a kid, arroz con pollo. This is more of a Mexican style chicken and rice. So I'm going to flip these over and just continue browning and cooking them. This whole process takes about 10 to 12 minutes. And I am using a medium to medium high heat. I don't want to burn things, I want it to be brown. So I have had many requests over the last several years. Instead of making like large family style meals, cooking for 2 or 1 has been requested. So I started to do this series and I will be doing other recipes. Like I've said before, be sure to comment with some of the recipes you want to see smaller portions or quantities for. I got a request for enchiladas for 2, so I'll be making that. So I rinsed my rice in cold water and it's going into my pan with whatever residual fond and cooking oil. And I am going to toast this. I did turn down the heat source. I don't want the rice to burn. I just want it to be golden, just like you see here. I want it to become fragrant, aromatic. You see the fond kind of pulled away from the pan. That's great. Now I'm going in with my chopped or diced onion, and I'm going to saute that as I continue to toast the rice. And toasting the rice helps to keep the texture when you add the liquid. Okay, I'm going in with about a half teaspoon of ground cumin. I'll say that's optional. Some people don't like cumin. Here I have 2 cloves of garlic that I chopped up, and I'm going to continue the saute. I don't want to burn the garlic, so another minute or so. And putting the ground cumin into the pan while you're toasting the rice just makes it more fragrant and aromatic. So you can opt to use half of this can of tomato sauce, but I want things to be kind of soupy and very tomatoey. So I'm going for the whole can, and I'm going to mix that in. And then I'm going to use that same can and measure out 8 ounces of chicken broth. I'm using bone broth because I kind of rummaged my pantry, but chicken broth, water works, and you season how you like. A little bit of cracked pepper, And I am going to add like 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder. If you prefer not to use chicken bouillon powder, you can add like a half teaspoon of salt, give it a mix, and at this point give it a taste for salt and seasoning and adjust to your preference. Okay, I'm going to add it back in the chicken wings, and I'm just going to arrange them as best as I can in this pot. And what I'm going to do is just to add all of that juice that's left in the bowl where the chicken was kind of hanging out. I'm going to cover with a lid. And as you can see, it's already simmering, and I'm going to lower the heat and set the timer for about 15 to 18 minutes. And do not lift the lid. I think I'm going to go for 15 minutes for this pot of chicken and rice. And once the time is up, I'm going to shut off the heat. And I'm not removing the lid. I'm just going to set it to the side, and you'll want to let it set with the lid on for about 10 minutes. I chopped some fresh parsley, and that's what I'm going to garnish it with. And after the 10 minutes, you can garnish and serve. This pan of chicken and rice for 2 people, or even if you double this recipe, is so versatile. You could toss in potatoes, veggies, the veggies of your choice, whether they're fresh or frozen. It all works. I make it all types of ways, and it never disappoints. It's so, so good. This is just very simple, good eats, and I suggest you give this recipe a try. Look at this. So perfect. It came out so good, just the way I like it. So I'm going to serve some, and like I said, you can make this for one person and save some for the next day. It's that good. Definitely a great date night or dinner for 2. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.